So, Olivia, still doodling for a living? Uncle Robert's booming voice carried across our family's annual business meeting. The mahogany-paneled conference room at Bennett Industries headquarters echoed with polite chuckles. I sat at the far end of the table mentally counting the zeros in my latest contract while they laughed. 5 years of building my design agency from scratch, and they still saw me as the family disappointment. The art school graduate who refused to join the real business world. Actually, it's brand strategy and digital design now, I corrected, keeping my voice level. My agency's doing quite well. Oh, honey, Aunt Patricia patted my hand condescendingly. We know you make those cute little logos for coffee shops. But today we're discussing serious business. If only they knew about the confidentiality agreement I'd signed last week. The one that would change everything. My cousin Marcus, newly appointed VP of Marketing, stood up to begin his presentation. Today, I'm excited to share our company's complete rebranding strategy. This pitch is worth potentially $50 million in new contracts. I pulled out my tablet, pretending to take notes while hiding my smile. 3 months ago, Marcus's team had approached several top design agencies for this rebranding project. They'd used a blind selection process to avoid bias. The companies were identified only by numbers, not names. The future of Bennett Industries lies in innovation, Marcus continued, clicking to his first slide. We need to shed our old-fashioned image and emerge as a modern, dynamic force in the market. The room fell silent as the presentation began. I watched their faces carefully, waiting for the moment of recognition. Our new brand identity was created by one of the top design firms in the country, Marcus announced proudly. They've worked with Silicon Valley giants, transformed startups into household names, and now they're going to revolutionize Bennett Industries. The first slide appeared, showcasing a sleek, modern logo design. My logo design, created by Studio Nova, my company. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the design. It's different. Very modern. Exactly. Marcus beamed. Wait until you see the full brand package. The agency absolutely nailed our vision. I watched as he flipped through slide after slide of my work. The dynamic typography I'd spent weeks perfecting. The color palette that had kept me up for nights. The brand architecture that my team had meticulously crafted. The best part, Marcus continued, is that this agency's track record is incredible. Their last 3 rebrands resulted in average market value increases of 40% for their clients. Uncle Robert, our CEO, nodded approvingly. What's the agency's name? We should have them here for the next meeting. Marcus clicked to the final slide. They're called Studio Nova, and they're actually... The room froze as my company logo filled the screen. Several heads swiveled toward me, jaws dropping in unison. One of the fastest-growing design agencies in the country, Marcus finished weakly, finally making the connection. Uncle Robert's face turned an interesting shade of red. This is some kind of joke. No joke, I said, standing up and walking to the front of the room. Studio Nova is my company. We won your blind pitch because we were the best, not because we're family. Impossible, Aunt Patricia whispered. I pulled up our company portfolio on the main screen. Studio Nova. Founded 5 years ago. Current annual revenue, $12 million. Clients include 3 Fortune 500 companies and numerous tech startups. Our recent rebrand for Tech Fusion resulted in a 60% increase in market value within 6 months. But you just make logos, Cousin Emma stuttered. We create comprehensive brand strategies that drive market growth, I corrected. Those cute little logos you mocked? They're part of sophisticated marketing ecosystems that have transformed companies across the globe. Dad stood up slowly. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? I asked quietly. 5 years ago, when I declined the junior marketing position here, you all said I was throwing my life away. When I won my first major client, you were too busy celebrating Marcus's promotion to hear about it. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus stood frozen by the presentation screen, his earlier confidence evaporated. Uncle Robert kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water, while Aunt Patricia clutched her designer pearls. My phone buzzed. A message from my creative director, Maya. Google just confirmed. They want the full package. Contract value, $15 million. Perfect timing. Since we're all here, I said, taking control of the presentation, let me show you exactly what Studio Nova is capable of. I connected my tablet to the display. This is our current client portfolio. The screen filled with instantly recognizable logos, brands that made Uncle Robert's eyes widen and Aunt Patricia's grip on her pearls tighten. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. These are billion-dollar companies. Yes, they are, I confirmed, swiping through project after project. And they all chose Studio Nova because we don't just design logos, we transform businesses. Dad leaned forward. The TechFusion rebrand. That was you? The same rebrand that increased their stock price by 60%? Yes. I pulled up their before and after metrics. We didn't just change their look. We repositioned their entire market presence. But your office? Aunt Patricia interjected. Last year at Christmas, you said you were working from that little space downtown. I smiled. That was our old office. Would you like to see the new one? I pulled up photos of Studio Nova's headquarters. 3 floors in the city's most prestigious business district. Modern, open-plan spaces filled with creative talent. Meeting rooms buzzing with innovation. A rooftop garden where teams brainstormed under the sky. 45 full-time employees, I continued. 3 international satellite offices. A waiting list of clients that includes some of the biggest names in tech, fashion, and yes, industrial manufacturing. Uncle Robert's face had progressed from red to purple. Why are we just learning about this now? Because you never asked, I replied simply. You were all so convinced I was wasting my potential that you never bothered to see what I was building. My phone buzzed again. This time it was our financial director. Q3 projections just came in. We're up 85% from last year. Now, I turned back to the room, about Bennett Industries' rebranding project. Given the unique circumstances, I think we should discuss the contract terms. We already agreed on the price, Marcus said quickly. Yes, but that was before you knew Studio Nova was family. I smiled. Standard industry rates won't apply here. We'll need to adjust for potential conflicts of interest. Uncle Robert straightened his tie. Now see here, Olivia. Our new rate, I cut him off, will be 30% above the original quote. Plus priority scheduling fees. That's outrageous. Aunt Patricia exclaimed. Is it? I pulled up TechFusion's market performance charts. Our work increased their value by over $500 million. How much is Bennett Industries' future worth to you? Dad, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. She's right. We need this rebrand. And he looked around the room, clearly. We need to start paying more attention to what's happening outside our bubble. The room erupted in protests and arguments. I stood calmly at the front, watching years of dismissal and condescension crumble under the weight of undeniable success. I have another meeting in 30 minutes, I announced, gathering my things. A global tech company that values what we do. Take the day to discuss my terms. If you decide to look elsewhere, I wish you luck finding an agency with our track record. As I walked toward the door, Marcus called out, Wait, the presentation, we need. My team will send over a revised contract by this evening, I said without turning around. Standard corporate terms plus the family premium. Oh, and Marcus. I paused at the door. Those slides you've been showing? They're just the basic concepts. The real innovation hasn't even started yet. The next morning my office was buzzing with energy. News of our Bennett Industries connection had spread through the company, and my team was already brainstorming ideas that would revolutionize the state-old firm. Maya burst into my office, tablet in hand. Olivia, you need to see this. Your family's company stocks jumped 12% just on the rumor that we're handling their rebrand. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, taking in the view of the city from my corner office. And that's before we've even started the real work. Also, Maya smirked, your cousin Marcus has called 6 times already. And your uncle's secretary is trying to schedule an emergency family dinner tonight. Of course they are, I murmured, remembering all the family dinners I'd been excluded from because I was just a designer who wouldn't understand their important business discussions. My phone lit up with another call. Dad this time. After letting it ring several times, I answered. Hello, Dad. Olivia. His voice was different now, lacking its usual patronizing tone. We need to talk. The board. They've been reviewing Studio Nova's portfolio all morning. It's impressive doesn't begin to cover it. I know. Why didn't you ever tell me? About the success, the clients, any of it? I stood up, walking to the window. Remember my first major client? I tried to tell you at Christmas 3 years ago. You and Uncle Robert were too busy discussing Marcus's new company car. When I won the Tech Fusion contract, Mom said it was nice, and changed the subject to Emma's engagement. He was quiet for a long moment. We were wrong. All of us. We were so focused on our traditional idea of success that we couldn't see you were redefining it. Dad, I didn't build Studio Nova to prove you wrong. I built it because I saw where the future was heading while all of you were stuck in the past. Every company, every brand needs to evolve or die. That's what we do here. We help businesses transform for the digital age. Like you're going to transform Bennett Industries? If you can afford us, I smiled. Our rates just went up again this morning. Google's contract announcement caused quite a stir in the industry. Another pause. About tonight's dinner. I can't make it, I cut in. I'm flying to Silicon Valley in 2 hours. Emergency consultation with a major tech firm. Their CEO specifically requested me. But the family has my terms, I finished. The contract's on Marcus's desk. Standard rate plus family premium non-negotiable. If Bennett Industries wants Studio Nova's services, you'll need to compete with Google, Apple, and 3 other Fortune 500 companies for our time. You're really not going to give us special treatment? He sounded surprised. Special treatment? Like the kind you gave me all these years. Kept my voice level. The contract's fair, Dad. Actually, it's more than fair, considering our current market position. Maya appeared in my doorway, pointing at her watch. The jet was waiting. I have to go, I told Dad. Have Marcus call my assistant if you decide to sign. Dad, next time you're at a family gathering and some young cousin talks about their dreams, try listening. You might be surprised where it leads. As my private jet took off an hour later, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Bennett Industries signs historic contract with design powerhouse Studio Nova. Stock surges 20%. I smiled, opening my laptop to review the preliminary concepts my team had created. The old guard at Bennett Industries wouldn't know what hit them. We weren't just going to update their image. We were going to drag them into the future whether they were ready or not. 3 days later, I returned to find the office abuzz with excitement. Maya met me at the elevator with a tablet full of updates. The Bennett Industries contract is just the beginning, she grinned. We've had 12 major corporations reach out since the announcement. Apparently, being the agency that's revolutionizing one of the oldest industrial firms in the country is good for business. Schedule a team meeting, I said, heading to my office. It's time to expand. I want proposals for new offices in London, Tokyo, and Dubai by next week. Already in progress, Maya smiled. Oh, and your family's been calling. All of them. Apparently, Uncle Robert's country club friends are fighting over who gets to pitch their companies to us next. I logged into my computer, pulling up the latest designs for Bennett Industries transformation. Send them all to my assistant. Standard rate supply. No family discounts. Even for Aunt Patricia? She left 6 messages about her charity foundation needing a little logo refresh. I thought about all the times she'd dismissed my career as playing with computers. Especially for Aunt Patricia, I confirmed. And make sure she knows our minimum project fee is now 7 figures. The next family business meeting was scheduled for the following month. This time my name was at the top of the agenda. As I prepared my presentation, not just for Bennett Industries' rebrand, but for Studio Nova's global expansion plans, I thought about that small design studio I'd started 5 years ago. They'd called it a hobby, a phase, a waste of potential. Now they were calling it genius, innovative, revolutionary. But I hadn't changed. I'd simply waited for them to catch up to what I'd known all along. That in today's world, design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about transforming how businesses connect with people, how brands evolve in a digital age, how companies survive in a rapidly changing marketplace. My assistant popped her head in. Your cousin Emma's on line 1. Something about her husband's startup needing a rebrand. I glanced at the wall of awards in my office, at the magazine covers featuring our work, at the stock tickers showing our clients' success. Tell her our waiting list is 6 months long, I replied. But she's welcome to fill out an application on our website. Just like everyone else. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding, but succeeding so spectacularly that those who doubted you end up standing in line, waiting for a chance to be part of what they once mocked. As I prepared for my flight to London to open our new international headquarters, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. They'd laughed at my little design thing, never realizing that in today's world, design isn't just art, it's power. And I had built an empire with it. The story continued to unfold as Studio Nova's influence grew. At the next Bennett Industries board meeting, I wasn't seated at the far end of the table. I was presenting from the head position. My logo didn't just appear on their presentations anymore. It became the symbol of their unprecedented transformation. Uncle Robert eventually retired, and to everyone's surprise, the board approached me about joining as a strategic advisor. I declined politely, sending my CEO instead. I'm too busy revolutionizing global brands, I explained. The final irony came when Marcus enrolled in our newly established Studio Nova Academy, a training program teaching next-generation designers and brand strategists. He sat in the back row, taking notes as I delivered the keynote speech about disrupting traditional business models. My parents finally hung my framed Forbes cover in their living room, replacing the family portrait where they'd all worn matching suits. Our daughter, the design mogul, they now proudly told their friends. But the sweetest moment came when my youngest cousin, fresh out of art school, approached me at the next family gathering. They all say I'm wasting my time with digital art, she whispered. I handed her my card. Come see me Monday. Sometimes the biggest success stories start with someone telling you you're wasting your time. Because in the end it was never about the logos or the designs. It was about seeing the future while others clung to the past, about believing in your vision when everyone else saw only scribbles. And now they all wore my scribbles on their business cards, proud to be associated with the brand they once mocked.
The gleaming headquarters of Chen Fashion House stood like a crystal monument in downtown Los Angeles, its windows reflecting the California sun. I walked through the glass doors one last time, knowing that in less than an hour, everything I'd built would be taken from me, or so my sister thought. I'm Sarah Chin, founder and, until approximately noon today, CEO of Chen Fashion House, the brand that revolutionized sustainable luxury fashion. Our eco-friendly materials and innovative designs had caught the attention of LVMH, leading to acquisition talks that would make us a global powerhouse. At least that was the plan until my sister Michelle decided she deserved to be more than just creative director. Morning, Sarah. Lisa from marketing called out cheerfully. Big board meeting today? If she only knew. You could say that. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt surreal. In my designer tote, ironically, one of our bestsellers, I carried proof of Michelle's calculated betrayal. Secret meetings with board members, backdated voting rights transfers, carefully orchestrated power plays. Classic corporate takeover tactics executed by my own sister. What she didn't know was that I had been 3 steps ahead of her from the start, ever since I caught her showing our confidential designs to LVMH executives 2 years ago. The boardroom was already full when I arrived. Michelle sat in her creative director chair, perfectly styled in our latest collection, iPad Pro ready for notes. Our other board members, 2 venture capitalists from Fashion Forward Fund, our angel investor James Wong, and our CFO Michael Torres, all avoided my eyes. Sarah, Michelle nodded coolly. Let's begin, shall we? I took my seat at the head of the table, noting how everyone subtly shifted toward Michelle's side. They'd made their choice. Before we start, I said calmly, I'd like to address what's really happening here, specifically the planned vote to remove me as CEO. The room froze. Michelle's practiced smile didn't waver, but her perfectly manicured hands tightened around her iPad. I have copies of all the communications, I continued, the secret meetings at Soho House, the voting rights transfers, even the drafted press release announcing my decision to step down to focus on personal projects. Sarah, Michelle started, her voice smooth as silk. You're obviously stressed about the LVMH acquisition. Maybe you should take some time to recharge. I finished for her. Like you suggested to the board I needed. right before proposing yourself as interim CEO. Michael at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. The venture capitalists maintained their practiced neutral expressions. The fact is, Michelle said, standing now, the board has concerns about your leadership. The LVN deal requires steady hands. Your recent behavior suggests you might not be the right person to guide us through this crucial transition. Translation: I'd refuse to accept LVM's initial offer, knowing our brand and technology were worth far more. Michelle, eager for her moment in the spotlight, had been undermining me ever since. Let's be clear about what's really happening, I said, opening my laptop. You've spent 6 months convincing the board I'm unstable because I wouldn't take a lowball offer. You've manipulated voting rights to create a majority. And now you're planning to push me out and quickly close a deal that undervalues our company by at least $100 million. These accusations are ridiculous, Michelle snapped, but James Wong was already pulling out his phone, probably checking the documentation I'd mentioned. Shall we vote then? I asked quietly. The next 15 minutes were corporate theater at its finest. Michelle presented her carefully prepared case for my removal. Concerns about my erratic leadership, fears about losing the LVMH deal, veiled suggestions about my mental state. The board listened, nodded, and voted exactly as she orchestrated. The motion carries, Michelle announced, not quite hiding her triumph. Sarah Chen is hereby removed as CEO of Chen Fashion House. Effective immediately, I will assume the role of interim CEO to ensure a smooth transition and successful completion of the acquisition negotiations. I stood slowly, gathering my things. Congratulations, sister. Just one small detail you might want to consider. Security will escort you out, she said dismissively. Before they do, you should probably take a look at this. I projected an email onto the screen behind her. This just came in from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Michelle frowned, turning to read. I watched the perfect foundation on her face seem to crack. That's impossible, she whispered. Trademark registration number 88 to 742 391. I read aloud. Revolutionary eco-friendly fabric processing technology and sustainable luxury fashion designs. Sole owner, Sarah Chen Personal Holdings LC. Filed 2 years ago, all rights assigned to my personal company rather than Chen Fashion House. The venture capitalists were already on their phones, presumably calling their lawyers. James Wong was turning an interesting shade of pale. The sustainable fabric technology that makes our brand unique. I continued pleasantly. The eco-friendly processing that LVMH wants to buy. I developed it before bringing it to the company. Before I made you creative director, Chen Fashion House has been operating under a personal license from me, which, I checked my watch, expired approximately 2 minutes ago when you removed me as CEO. You can't do this, Michelle sputtered. The company owns all intellectual property. Developed while working for the company, yes, I agreed. But this technology predates Chen Fashion House. Check the timestamps. Check the documentation. Check anything you want. My lawyers already have. The security guards Michelle had called were waiting by the door, but no one was moving to escort me out. Everyone was too busy reading the trademark details now displayed on their screens. So here's the situation, I said, picking up my tote. You can have the company, Michelle, but without a license to my technology, what you have is an empty shell. No sustainable fabrics, no eco-friendly processing, no $200 million LVMH acquisition. Just a very nice office with a great view of Los Angeles. We'll challenge this, she threatened. The board will. The board, James Wong interrupted sharply, will need to reassess its position. Sarah, perhaps we should discuss this privately? I shook my head. No need. My resignation is effective immediately, as per the vote. I'll be starting a new company, one that owns rather valuable intellectual property. I hear LVMH is interested in sustainable luxury fashion. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Michelle, Mom expects us for dim sum on Sunday. Try not to be late this time. The security guards stepped aside, apparently unsure who they were supposed to be removing. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I heard the boardroom erupt into chaos. Lisa from marketing caught me in the lobby. Sarah, is everything okay upstairs? I smiled, thinking about the other insurance policy hidden in my home office. The one that would really turn the fashion world upside down. Everything's fine, I assured her, just some unexpected family business. But tomorrow? I grinned. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting. The next 24 hours in the fashion world were chaos. Women's Wear Daily broke the story first. Chen Fashion House CEO ousted, major IP dispute threatens LVMH deal. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with calls from every fashion journalist, luxury brand, and competitor in the industry. I ignored them all, sitting in my Malibu home office, watching the story unfold exactly as I planned. The trademark was just the beginning. The real bombshell was still waiting to drop. Ms. Chen. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Bernard Arnault from LVMH is on line 1. And your mother on line 2. I smiled. Right on schedule. Put Mom through first. Sarah Chen. Mom's voice crackled with familiar authority. What is this I'm reading about you and your sister? The entire Chinese community is talking. Michelle tried to steal my company, Mom. And you embarrass her in front of the entire board? In front of important investors? Have you forgotten everything about family harmony? I glanced at the folder on my desk, printouts of Michelle's secret emails plotting my removal, dating back almost a year. Sometimes harmony has to be earned, Mom. Is Michelle there with you? A pause. She's been in her old room since this morning. Won't stop crying. Good. Tell her to stay there. She'll want to see the news in about an hour. Sarah. Trust me, Mom. And maybe start preparing some of your special wonton soup. We're going to have company for dinner. I hung up and switched to line 1. Bernard, I was wondering when you'd call. Bernard Arnault, CEO of LVMH, didn't waste time on pleasantries. That's quite a technology portfolio you've been sitting on, Sarah. Want to explain why we're just learning about it now? Because until today, there was no reason to mention it. Chen Fashion House had a perpetual license to use the technology as long as I remained CEO. Now? I shrugged, though he couldn't see it. Now things are more complicated. The acquisition deal is dead, I finished, at least in its current form. But I'm happy to discuss a new deal, one that reflects the true value of the technology. There was a long pause. The original offer was fair. The original offer was $200 million for technology that will revolutionize sustainable luxury fashion. Technology that, as of this morning, legally belongs to me personally, not Chen Fashion House. Would you like to know what Kering offered 20 minutes ago? Another pause. When can you be in Paris? I can't. Family dinner tonight. But you're welcome to join us in Los Angeles. My mother makes excellent wonton soup. To his credit, Bernard caught on quickly. Text me the address. I'll bring the wine. The next call was to Lisa from marketing, who had already received offers from 3 luxury brands. How would you like to be head of global marketing at a new company? One with actual ownership of its core technology. When do I start? By noon, I'd secured commitments from most of Chen Fashion House's key designers and technical team. By 2, I had verbal offers from 5 major luxury conglomerates. But the real show was set for 3 o'clock, when the second part of my insurance policy would become public. Right on schedule, Vogue broke the story. Chen Fashion House's eco-friendly claims in question. Anonymous source reveals documentation. I watched from my home office as Chen Fashion House's stock price started to plummet. The anonymous source, actually my carefully documented research files, showed that while my sustainable fabric technology was genuine, Michelle had been cutting corners on production using non-eco-friendly processes while marketing them as green. The phone rang again. Michelle. You knew, she said without preamble. You knew about the production changes all along. Of course I knew. I'm the one who warned you about sustainability certification 6 months ago, right before you started plotting to remove me. The company is tanking. The LVMH deal is dead. Are you happy now? Actually, Mr. Arnault is coming to Mom's for dinner. We're going to discuss a new deal, one that involves my new company, which owns both the technology and proper sustainability certifications. Silence. You should come too, I added. Mom's making wonton soup. Why? Her voice cracked. Why not just destroy me completely? Because you're still my sister, and because Mom would never forgive me. 7 o'clock, don't be late. The scene at our parents' house that evening was surreal. Mom's dining room table, where we'd eaten Sunday dinners our entire lives, now hosted the CEO of LVMH, 3 prominent fashion executives, and our family's old friend Uncle Jean, who'd helped me file the original patents 2 years ago. Michelle arrived last for perfect makeup, unable to hide the evidence of tears. Mom, bless her, acted like having fashion industry billionaires at her table was completely normal. Eat, eat, she insisted, serving more soup. Business can wait until after dinner. Over wontons and wine, the new deal took shape. My new company would acquire Chen Fashion House in a stock swap, with LVMH then acquiring the combined entity for $500 million. Michelle would keep her shares but step down from any management role. Most importantly, the Chen sisters would remain sisters. I still don't understand, Michelle said later as we sat in the garden like we used to as kids. You knew what I was planning. You could have stopped it earlier, exposed the sustainability issues, ruined me. Why wait? I sipped the vintage wine Bernard had brought. Because I needed you to show everyone who you really are. And who I really am. And who's that? You have a sister who'd betray family for fame. I'm the one who'd find a way to save both the company and the family. She winced. Mom's never going to let me forget this. No, I agreed. But she's also never going to let me forget that family comes first, even when family betrays you. The new company, she said quietly, there's really no place for me? Not in management, but your shares are still worth about $50 million. Not bad for someone who tried to steal her sister's company. Mom came out with more wontons, insisting the CEO of the world's largest luxury conglomerate needed feeding. I watched her fuss over everyone equally. The daughter who tried to commit corporate fratricide and the daughter who'd outmaneuvered her. The billionaires and the family members, all getting the same maternal treatment. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, contracts, and press releases. The media loved the story. Fashion sisters' battle ends in $500 million peace deal. The new company, Phoenix Sustainable Luxury, launched with a dream team of designers and a clear mission. LVMH fast-tracked the acquisition. Kering made a competing offer, and the final price settled at $600 million. Michelle took a long sabbatical, then started a sustainable fashion consultancy focusing on ethical production. She still comes to Sunday dinner, though she's quieter now, more thoughtful. Mom makes sure we sit next to each other. Yesterday, at the signing ceremony for the LVMH acquisition, a reporter asked if I was worried about other family betrayals. In fashion, like in family, I replied, the best designs aren't just about appearance. They're about the integrity of what's beneath the surface. The night after the deal closed, I found an old photo in Mom's album. Michelle and me at my first fashion show, proudly showing off dresses we designed together. Next to it, she placed a framed copy of the acquisition announcement. To remind you both, she said firmly, that success means nothing without family. She was right, of course. The trademark, the sustainability revelation, the negotiations. They were all just leverage. The real victory wasn't in the millions or the headlines. It was in finding a way to save both the company and the family. Michelle and I still argue about design aesthetics at Sunday dinner. Mom still makes too many wontons. Dad still says we work too hard. But now there's a new understanding between us all. Success isn't just about winning, it's about how you win. The fashion world moves fast. Trends come and go, but family endures. Sometimes it takes a betrayal to remind us of that truth, and sometimes it takes a sister's forgiveness to show us how to move forward. Today, Phoenix Sustainable Luxury is revolutionizing the fashion industry. Our technology is changing how luxury goods are made, and the Chen sisters are still having Sunday dinner at Mom's table. Different seats maybe, different perspectives certainly, but still family. As for me, I keep the original patents framed in my office next to that old fashion show photo, a reminder that in business, as in family, the best victories are the ones that leave room for redemption. The Thanksgiving turkey was perfectly roasted, the potatoes were creamy, and the tension in the Palmer family dining room was thick enough to carve with the silver serving knife that Margaret Palmer had inherited from her mother. I sat quietly at the end of the enormous mahogany table, trying to focus on my meal rather than the conversation swirling around me. My husband Thomas squeezed my hand under the table, his silent apology for his parents' behavior. So Thomas tells us Westside General is offering you a position. My father-in-law Richard boomed from the head of the table. Smart move, finally joining a real hospital. When do you start? I took a small sip of water before answering. I haven't accepted the offer, Richard. I'm happy at the East End Clinic. The look of disbelief on his face would have been comical if it weren't so insulting. You can't be serious, Margaret interjected, her diamond bracelet clinking against her wine glass. That place in that neighborhood. Thomas said the offer from West Side is triple your current salary. Thomas cleared his throat. Mom, Sarah loves the work she's doing at East End. It's important to her. Playing nurse at some neighborhood clinic when she could be at West Side? Richard scoffed. No offense, Sarah, but a real doctor works at prestigious hospitals, builds connections, creates a legacy. I am building something meaningful, I said quietly. East End serves people who can't pay, Margaret finished for me. Such a waste of potential, especially with your education. What was it? Harvard Medical? Johns Hopkins, I corrected, though I knew it made no difference to them. In their world, my choice to work at a community clinic rather than chase prestige and wealth was incomprehensible. Well, Richard raised his glass to Thomas's real achievement, making partner at Palmer Investments at just 32, youngest partner in the firm's history. I raised my glass along with everyone else, genuinely proud of my husband. Thomas had worked incredibly hard, even if his path had been smoothed by working at his father's investment firm. At least one of you understands ambition, Richard added, unable to resist the dig. Later that night, as Thomas and I drove back to our modest apartment, another choice my in-laws couldn't understand given Thomas's income, he apologized. I'm sorry about my parents. You know how they are. I did know. Richard and Margaret Palmer measured success in very specific ways. Prestigious institutions, income brackets, zip codes, and social connections. My choice to work at East End Clinic serving low-income patients was, to them, throwing away my medical degree. What they didn't know, what almost no one knew except Thomas and my closest colleagues, was that I wasn't just a doctor at East End Clinic. I was Dr. Sarah Chin Palmer, Chief of Cardiology at Boston Memorial Hospital, one of the top cardiac care centers in the country. I split my time between my hospital duties and the clinic, which BMH had established as a community outreach initiative under my direction. I had never corrected my in-laws' assumptions about my career. At first, it was because they showed so little interest in my work beyond where I did it. Later, it became a matter of principle. I refused to validate their shallow metrics of success. Thomas had urged me many times to set them straight. They're being ridiculous, Sarah. If they knew you were literally one of the top cardiologists in the country, then what? I'd ask. They'd suddenly respect the work I do at East End. They'd understand why I spend 3 days a week at a clinic in a neighborhood they'd never visit. No, they'd just focus on the BMH part and ignore the rest. So I had let the misunderstanding persist, limiting family conversations to Thomas's career and other safe topics. It wasn't ideal, but it kept the peace during the handful of times we saw them each year. What I couldn't have anticipated was how dramatically this arrangement would collapse just 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving dinner. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was already at Boston Memorial, having been called in for an emergency valve replacement surgery 2 hours earlier. Dr. Palmer, the ER resident's voice was tense. We have a 64-year-old male with acute myocardial infarction being rushed in. EKG shows ST elevation in multiple leads. Ambulance ETA 4 minutes. Prep cath lab 2, I instructed, already moving toward the elevator. Have blood work ready and alert the surgical team as precaution. Yes, doctor. There's one more thing. The patient's name is Richard Palmer. Any relation? I froze mid-stride. He's my father-in-law. I'm on my way down. The next moments passed in a blur as I called Thomas, who had been asleep at home, and then focused on preparing mentally for what was ahead. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was waiting in the ER. My professional demeanor firmly in place despite the personal connection. Richard was conscious but in obvious distress, his face gray with pain as the paramedics transferred him to the hospital gurney. Margaret followed behind, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, terror evident in her eyes. Richard, she cried, rushing to his side. Then she saw me standing there in my white coat, stethoscope around my neck. Confusion crossed her face. Sarah? What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, the charge nurse intervened. "Mrs. Palmer, Dr. Chen Palmer is our chief of cardiology. Your husband is in excellent hands." Margaret's mouth fell open, but there was no time to address her shock. "We need to move quickly," I said, my voice calm but authoritative. "Richard, you're having a heart attack. We're taking you to the catheterization lab immediately to clear the blockage." Richard stared at me with a mixture of pain and confusion. "You're the doctor? But you work at the clinic." "I'll explain everything later," I assured him as we began moving toward the cath lab. "Right now, I need you to trust me." To his credit, he nodded weakly. To Margaret, I added, "Thomas is on his way. The nurse will take you to the waiting area." The next 2 hours were among the most intense of my professional career. Richard's heart attack was severe, a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery, often called the widowmaker. The procedure to clear it and place stents was complicated by his anatomy and the extent of the blockage. Throughout it all, I remained focused, pushing aside the personal connection and working with my team to save his life. Only afterward, when Richard was stabilized and moved to recovery, did I allow myself to feel the emotional weight of what had just happened. Thomas was waiting with Margaret in the family consultation room, both jumping to their feet when I entered. "He's stable," I said immediately, removing the surgical cap from my head. We were able to clear the blockage and place 2 stents. The next 24 hours are critical, but he responded well to the procedure. Margaret stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You're really the chief of cardiology here?" I nodded, too exhausted for anything but directness. "Yes, for the past 3 years, I split my time between Boston Memorial and East End Clinic." "But why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and what sounded almost like hurt. Thomas stepped in. "Mom, you and Dad never asked. You just assumed Sarah was playing nurse because she chose to work in a community clinic part of the week." Margaret had the grace to look embarrassed. "I don't understand. If you work here, why bother with that clinic at all?" I sank into a chair, suddenly aware I'd been on my feet for nearly 8 hours. "Because medicine isn't just about prestige or money, Margaret. East End Clinic serves people who would otherwise fall through the cracks of our healthcare system. We catch heart conditions before they become emergencies like Richard's. We manage chronic diseases that would otherwise go untreated. And yes, we do it regardless of the patient's ability to pay." "But you could be focusing entirely on your work here," she persisted, though with less certainty. "The clinic is my work here," I explained. Boston Memorial established it as an outreach initiative. I helped design the program. Preventative cardiology in underserved communities is my specialty. I've published research papers on it. The clinic isn't separate from my career, it's central to it." Margaret fell silent, processing this information that contradicted years of assumptions. Thomas put his arm around me, his support quiet but unwavering. Richard's recovery was lengthy but steady. During his 5 days in the hospital, he saw firsthand the respect my colleagues had for me. Attending physicians consulted me on other cardiac cases. Residents sought my guidance. Even the hospital administrator stopped by to check on Dr. Chen Palmer's father-in-law, making it clear that I was not just any staff cardiologist. On his 3rd day in the hospital, while Margaret was at their home gathering fresh clothes, Richard asked me a question that surprised me. "The clinic? East End. Do you really make a difference there?" I pulled up a chair beside his bed. "We do. Just last month, we identified 17 cases of undiagnosed hypertension, 3 previously undetected valve conditions, and 1 congenital defect in a teenager who had never had proper cardiac screening. Without the clinic, those conditions would have gone untreated until they became emergencies." "Like mine," he said quietly. "Actually, your heart attack might have been preventable with earlier intervention." I confirmed. "Your cholesterol levels and blood pressure readings from the past few years suggested increasing risk." He was silent for a moment. I always thought community medicine was less important, second tier. "Many people do," I said, checking his IV without commenting further. "I was wrong," he added, his voice so quiet I almost missed it. 2 weeks after Richard's discharge, the Palmer family gathered again, this time at Thomas's and my apartment for a small dinner. Richard was still recovering, moving slowly and following a strict heart-healthy diet that Margaret had embraced with surprising enthusiasm. Before we eat, Richard said as we settled around our modest dining table, I want to say something. He looked directly at me, his expression more open than I'd ever seen it. Sarah, I owe you more than just my life, though that's no small debt. I owe you an apology. For years, I judged your career choices without understanding them. I dismissed work that quite literally saves lives every day because it didn't fit my narrow definition of success. Margaret nodded, adding, we both did. We were so blinded by our own prejudices that we couldn't see the remarkable physician you are, not just at Boston Memorial but especially at East End. I felt Thomas squeeze my hand under the table, this time in celebration rather than consolation. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot to me. There's more, Richard continued. Margaret and I have been discussing how we might support East End Clinic. I understand from Thomas that the facility needs expansion to serve more patients. I looked at my husband in surprise. He smiled sheepishly. Dad asked how he could help. I mentioned the expansion project you've been trying to fund. Richard nodded. The Palmer Foundation would like to provide a grant to cover the full expansion costs. $2 million with an additional endowment for ongoing operational support. I was momentarily speechless. The expansion had been my dream for years. Additional exam rooms, a dedicated imaging center, and expanded hours to serve patients who couldn't take time off work. Richard, Margaret, that's incredibly generous, I finally managed. It's the least we can do, Margaret said. Besides, I've been looking over the Foundation's giving strategy, and our focus on healthcare has been severely lacking. This is just good philanthropy. And Richard added with a wry smile, the invoice for my hospital stay was quite educational. Seeing the true cost of emergency cardiac care versus preventative medicine was illuminating, to say the least. Later that evening, after Richard and Margaret had gone, Thomas pulled me into his arms. So, Chief of Cardiology, how does it feel to finally be acknowledged by the intimidating Palmers? I laughed. Surreal. Though I'm still processing the fact that your father went from calling me a nurse to funding an entire clinic expansion in less than a month. Nothing like a near-death experience and a $287,000 hospital bill to change one's perspective. Thomas mused. I never wanted them to find out this way, I said more seriously. Despite everything, I wouldn't wish what Richard went through on anyone. Thomas nodded. I know, but maybe something good will come from it beyond just his recovery. The expansion will help thousands of patients, Sarah. 6 months later, I stood beside Richard and Margaret at the groundbreaking ceremony for the newly named Chen Palmer Cardiovascular Center at East End Clinic. My patients, many of whom had taken time off from hourly jobs to attend, watched with pride as their doctor was celebrated not just by hospital administrators and local politicians, but by her formerly disapproving in-laws. This center will bring world-class preventative cardiac care to our community, I told the gathered crowd. No one should have to wait for an emergency to receive the medical attention they deserve. Afterward, as we toured the existing clinic, I introduced Richard and Margaret to our staff and several patients. One elderly woman took Margaret's hand and said with tears in her eyes, Your daughter saved my life last year. I couldn't afford to see a heart doctor anywhere else. Margaret, who once would have been uncomfortable even visiting this neighborhood, embraced the woman warmly. She saves a lot of lives, she said with genuine pride, including my husband's. That evening, as Thomas and I walked home from the ceremony, he asked, Are you ever going to tell them that you turned down the chief position at Mayo Clinic last year? I laughed. Let's not push it. Some revelations are better saved for the future. Like the fact that you're being considered for the National Medal of Science. Exactly. Small steps, Thomas. They're still adjusting to the idea that their daughter-in-law, who they thought was playing nurse, is actually changing how cardiac care is delivered in underserved communities. He put his arm around me as we walked. You know what I love most about this whole situation? You never once did any of it. Your research, the clinic, saving my father, to prove anyone wrong. You did it because it was right. Though I have to admit, I conceded with a smile, the look on your father's face when he saw me in my chief of cardiology coat was pretty satisfying. Almost as satisfying as watching him write that $2 million check. Thomas teased. No, I said more seriously. The most satisfying part is knowing that the expansion will help us reach thousands more patients. That's worth more than any title or recognition. As we reached our apartment building, I glanced back in the direction of the clinic. Tomorrow I will be back there, seeing patients who might otherwise go without care, continuing the work that had always been my true calling, regardless of who understood its value. Sometimes the most powerful validation doesn't come from proving others wrong, but from staying true to your path until they finally see its worth for themselves. In medicine, as in life, the most meaningful rewards rarely come with prestigious titles or society's approval. They come from knowing that your work matters one heart at a time.